online there. Okay. So we have the timeline of King Nebuchadnezzar, who reigned from 630 to 561 BC. We start here in Daniel chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 2, we are given the first vision, or the first dream, really. Nebuchadnezzar is, and Daniel's explanation by the Lord to Nebuchadnezzar concerning this thing. So the first historical detail is found in Daniel 2, verses 31 to 32, which discusses Nebuchadnezzar. This in references to the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, as we talked about in Daniel chapter 2. You, O king, were watching, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue was large and of extraordinary radiance, and was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, right? This is Daniel explaining the details of what the statue looks like, right? And all of the subsequent characteristics of that statue. Then in chapter 2, verses 36 and following, he begins to give the explanation of what all of the characters and the qualities of the statue mean. We see this explanation in verses 36 to 37 of chapter 2. You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, the honor, and wherever the sons of mankind live, or all the animals of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has handed them over to you and has made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. Very simple. So the kingdom that is referenced here in terms of Daniel's explanation has to refer to the Babylonian Empire, and under its rulership, essentially, of King Nebuchadnezzar. That's the first kingdom. Continuing on here with the explanation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, we see again the second historical detail, again present from Daniel's point of view, by which he's explaining this to Nebuchadnezzar. This is found in chapter 2, verse 39a. We see this particular detail written in Daniel 2. After you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to you. By the way, this particular kingdom is also expressed in Daniel chapter 8 as well, verse 20. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 20, which is a vision that Daniel is given by the Lord himself. So this isn't given to another king or anything else like that. This is Daniel who's been given this vision by the Lord. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 20, concerning the ram and the goat and all of that, which we just got finished with, this chapter, refers to the kings and by extension the kingdom of Media and Persia. Okay. So after essentially Nebuchadnezzar's reign and the reign of the Babylonians, there will rise another kingdom, and the kings of Media and Persia. So according to our timeline here, we have the Babylonian Empire, which arose to power in 605 to 561 BC respectively. And right after that, which we are getting to, with the last king of the Babylonian Empire, that is Nabonidus, and the co-regent of Babylon, right, which we have been looking at in chapter 8, Belshazzar, we see the rise of the Persian Media Empire, and its rulers is King Cyrus and Darius. So the second kingdom is Persia, and Media. I mean, again, Persia is kind of the heavy of this particular group here, and Media is kind of just along for the ride, really. And the ruler is Cyrus, who is the king of Persia, and Darius the Mede, right, who is the vice regent of Babylon, which we talked about in Daniel, I believe Daniel chapter 6, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Darius the Mede. Okay, so from the statue, we have three particular kingdoms, or two particular empires. We have the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire. The Babylonian Empire is talked about in Daniel 2. The Persian Empire is talked about in Daniel 2 and in Daniel 8. With me so far? Probably not. That's okay. We'll keep moving. Okay. The second historical detail again continues in Daniel chapter 2, verses 39b. Okay. Chapter 2, verses 39b. It says, "Then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth." Okay. So the first one was gold, the second one was silver, this one was bronze. This is also discussed in Daniel chapter 8, verse 20 as well, concerning the ram and the goat as well. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 20, it says this. It says, "The shaggy goat represents the kingdom of Greece." Okay. I'm sorry, verse 21. Sorry, "The shaggy goat represents the kingdom of Greece, and the large horn that is between his eyes is the first king." Now, we talked about this in Daniel chapter 8, verse 20, that the first king of Greece was Alexander. Okay. So here we go. Here's our third timeline here. We have the Babylonian Empire. We have the Persian Media Empire, 550 to 531 BC. And then we have essentially the Grecian Empire, or the Hellenistic Age, concerning the kingdom of Greece from 323 to 146 BC. The rulers under this particular timeline are as follows. We have King Nebuchadnezzar from 630 to 561. We have King Darius, who rules at this particular time period, and then Alexander the Great, who is the first king of the Grecian Empire. And like I said, I mentioned before, we talked about him at length in this last chapter. So we have the third kingdom, which is Alexander the Great, which rules over Greece for a short period of time. And that is found in Daniel chapter 2, verse 39b, and Daniel chapter 8, verses 20, basically 21 to 22, respectively. Now, if things are about to get a little bit more confusing, but I think you guys could keep up with it. Let's continue here. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 24, going to Daniel chapter 8, verse 24, we see some details here concerning, again, some more details concerning the kingdom. It says, "The broken horn and the four horns that arose from its place represent four kingdoms which will arise from his nation, although not with his power." Again, remember that the shaggy goat represents the kingdom of Greece, and the large horn that is between his eyes is the first king. In verse 22, that large horn is broken. And in place of that large horn, there are four kingdoms which arise from this horn. That is this nation. Although this nation, doesn't have his power or his influence. Okay, so from the kingdom of Greece, we are now zooming into the kingdom of Greece. The kingdom of Babylon is over. Medo-Persia is over. We are now zooming into the kingdom of Greece, and Alexander the Great's rise and quick fall. In the place of Alexander the Great's rule, there are 4 kingdoms that are divided, right? Because he's dead. And so the land or the real estate is parceled out to 4 of his generals, all right? The 4 of his generals are as follows: Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus. Are you with me so far? Right. Tons of history, right? Tons of history. I love this stuff. Okay, here we go. Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus are now the rulers of the former empire under Alexander the Great. Okay? Because again, this one large horn was broken, and out of that one large horn that was broken, 4 empires came into its place. Let's look at some of the regions that these rulers ruled over. For Cassander, we have Macedonia and some of Greece, particularly in the west. Okay, Cassander ruled some of those. I believe in one sense he had the smallest land out of all of them. Ptolemy ruled northern Egypt and northern Africa. Okay. Antigonus ruled over Asia Minor, which included Israel. And Seleucus had Mesopotamia and Persia. That's important because the location of Mesopotamia has Babylon. Okay? So we have Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus. And these 4 generals ruled over these areas that basically divided Alexander the Great's real estate. Okay? This is found again in Daniel chapter 8, verses 21 and 22. Okay, let's continue. Back to Daniel 2. Man, here we go. Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar that there will be a 4th kingdom, strong as iron, and as much as iron crushes and shatters all things, so like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. Remember, when in Daniel chapter 2, we had discussed that a lot of the prevailing belief is that this is discussing the Roman Empire. And I had attempted to try to make the case that this 4th kingdom is not the Roman Empire. Okay? I went through great pains to discuss this, right? We went through the language, we went through the history, we went through some of the empires, and I concluded that based upon the descriptions of this text, that this was not talking about, although Rome was big, very influential, that this was not Rome, but it was the kingdom of Parthia. The 4th kingdom, I am convinced, from Daniel 2, is talking about the Parthian Empire. And the reason why I believe this, and I'm convinced of this, is because Babylon, from Daniel, from chapter 2, the focus is talking about Babylon and the rule of Babylon. Okay? Rome never had Babylon. They never occupied Babylon. They wanted to rule that region, but they never did. Okay? But Parthia did, and they were large. huge empire, bigger than Rome. As a matter of fact, Parthia, as I mentioned before, had little regions in Rome. Tried to take Rome tried to go to war with Parthia. They lost every time. Okay? They crushed all of these other empires, which I believe fits this. So Parthia is the fourth kingdom under Mithridates. Mithridates was the ruler that expanded the Parthian Empire to great heights. So from the perspective of Daniel, you have the kingdom of Greece, the four kingdoms by way of his generals. You have the regions and their rule, and then out of Seleucus and Mesopotamia and Persia arises the Parthian Empire. I believe that is the fourth kingdom that is discussed in Daniel 2. Let's continue. Back to Daniel 8, verse 23. In verse 23, we read the following. I'll start at verse 22 just to get our minds kind of in the text here. The broken horn and the four horns that arose in its place represent four kingdoms which will arise from the nation, or his nation, though not with his power. Verse 23. In the latter period of their rule, when the transgressors have run their course. This is the part that I'm a little not waffly, but I have some questions. I'm going to tell you where I land. That may change, okay? But I'm going to tell you where I land right now. So let's go back to this here, okay? How can I say this? There's information that we don't have yet. I'm going to try to make this case when we get all the way. You're going to have to wait for this one. When we get all the way to Daniel chapter 10 and 11, I'm going to make the case that the transgressors of the kingdom is talking about a particular period of time concerning Israel and some of the hostility between some of these particular kingdoms, particularly the king of the north and the king of the south, these two. Okay, you're gonna have to just wait for this. Okay, this is a whole other thing. Okay, so I can't get into this right now, but I believe that the transgressors of the kingdom is talking specifically about this particular time during this period, the king of the north and the king of the south, which is underscored in Daniel 10 and 11. Okay. Now I reserve the right to change this. Okay. So there's going to come a time where there's going to be a great period of upheaval, and the transgressors of the kingdom will continue to do things that transgress. They will invite idols. They will cause violence. They will cause destruction. They will wreak havoc. They will do all of these things, right? And at the center of it all is Israel. Okay. Here we go. Now we're going to turn our attention to Daniel 7. Daniel chapter 7, in the context of the four beasts here. Okay. In Daniel 7, we read the following in verses 12 and 17. It says, as for the rest of the beasts, that is concerning this vision that Daniel has, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. That's verse 12. Okay, concerning these four creatures, these four beasts here. And then in verse 17, which is all we've got really, says this: these great beasts, which are four kings who will arise from the earth. Okay. And of course, we see that also here as well. Okay. Here we go. So, we have the transgressors of the kingdom, which I just mentioned, that I believe that it's articulated in Daniel 10 and 11 specifically. We will get to those later on here. Then we have the four kings and their kingdoms. The reason why I'm separating this is because I believe that there is a shift. I can't explain this well. The trans. Let me take a minute right here. Coffee break. Okay. The transgressors of the kingdom are outlined. I believe the actions of them are outlined in Daniel 10 and in Daniel 11. I believe that, let me go back here. In Daniel 7, this is talking about four kings that are in the future concerning the time of Jacob's trouble, or at least before then. I believe that these are two different sections or two different aspects of time. This is concerning later on after Greece, when these people are divided and all of the actions here that come, particularly within Ptolemy and Antigonus. Okay, the king of the north and the king of the south. I do, but I'm also convinced as well that some of the actions of these individuals that we will see as we go through Daniel 10, they will parallel these kings and their kingdoms. So although but again, I reserve the right to change that. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 to 43. In that, this is concerning this other kingdom, this fifth kingdom here. In that you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom. I mentioned when we talked about this in chapter 2 that this is not the same kingdom that's talked about in the previous verses. Okay? But it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with the common clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, some of the kingdom will be strong, and some of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with the common clay. They will combine with one another in the seed of men. I mentioned that idiom refers to humanity itself. But they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. I believe that this is talking about that all the other kingdoms that existed, really there wasn't that much upheaval concerning, King Nebuchadnezzar, King Cyrus, King Alexander the Great. They were recognized amongst the people that ruled over, that they ruled over. Okay. In this particular kingdom, there's going to be some upheaval, not just from the people that are under it, but also the people that work among it. It's going to be very dysfunctional, very disorderly. We talked about that in chapter 2. It is going to be divided. Okay? Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 to underscore this point here. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23. Let's see here. I'll start at verse 21. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the wrong reference. I'm sorry. This is the wrong reference. I'm sorry. Let's read forward because I put the wrong reference up there. Verse 23. It says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and subdue 3 kings." Okay, so in this particular kingdom, we have a divided kingdom, but this divided kingdom will be different from all the other ones. It will just destroy everything. So even though there is division within this particular kingdom that's being described, this kingdom will be very powerful, very mighty, very strong. It will devour everything. That is this. So out of the 4 kings and their kingdoms, one will arise and destroy them all, or take them over, and or transfer their power over to them. Okay. Back to Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 to 43. Of course, we just read this. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Daniel chapter 8. Let's just stay here. Verses 41 to 43. "In the latter period of their rule, when the transgressors have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue." Again, we talked about this. When the transgressors have run their course, I believe, again, that's talking about the period in Daniel 10 and 11. Like I said, we'll get to that. When the transgressors have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. He will destroy to an extraordinary degree and prosper and perform his desire. He will destroy mighty men and holy people. And through his shrewdness, he will cause deceit to succeed by his influence. And he will magnify himself in his heart, and he will destroy many while they are at ease. He will even oppose the prince of princes, but he will be broken without agency. So, the divided kingdom, out of 4 kings that will arise, one will rule over a divided kingdom. That individual is known as the little horn, or the transgressor. The transgressor, the one that will destroy the holy people, the one that will destroy mighty men, the one that will destroy the sanctuary, the one that will exalt himself as the commander of the holy people. He will make himself out equal to be him. This is the individual that will rule over the divided kingdom. Okay, so after the transgressors have basically run their course, 4 kings will arise. Out of 4 kings that will arise, one will rule over them all, and yet will rule over a kingdom that is divided, that is hostile, that everybody doesn't bow to him, everybody doesn't acknowledge him, and he will seek to destroy those that don't. He will be known as the transgressor. Okay, let's continue. Back to Daniel 7. Verse 24, as I read again, and I will read this. "As for the 10 horns," this is again talking about these 4 beasts here. "As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous one and will subdue 3 kings. He will take out 3 kings out of these 10, basically establishing himself to have power amongst these particular rulers of this time. And because of that, he will be able to do things very quickly based upon the rule of these individuals and the regions they control and all that. Okay? So from here, we have the transgressors of these kingdoms, again, which is, again, I believe Daniel 10 and 11, or halfway through the 11. And then we have the divided kingdom, right, amongst those 4 kings. And then we have the little horn that comes out of this particular kingdom. He arises and rules here. He's known as the transgressor. And then we have the rulers of the transgressor. They will rule, he will control them, and they will do his bidding because of the subjugation of the 3 kings, which he took out. Okay, now we get to Daniel chapter 2, verses 44 to 45. Back to Nebuchadnezzar. It says, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it itself will endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and the explanation is trustworthy. This parallels with Daniel chapter 7, verse 11, concerning in the days of those kings, which is interesting, right? So in the days of those kings, when those kings are ruling, those evil rulers, and the authority that is basically following the bidding of this transgressor, this little horn, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom in those days, which is interesting. Daniel writes in Daniel chapter 7, verse 11, he goes, and I kept looking because the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking, I kept looking until the beast was slain. That is the horn and the kingdom associated with that horn was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. That God himself deals with this kingdom, this divided kingdom, this kingdom that has this little horn that grows into an ostentatious size, this kingdom that has these rulers that subdued 3 kings and set up this kingdom here. God will dispense of this kingdom. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 14, we also see somewhat a very similar thing. Daniel chapter 7, verse 14. I'll start at verse 13. It says, I kept looking in the night visions, Daniel said, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man, that is one that has the likeness of a human being, was coming, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given the dominion and the glory and the kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His kingdom is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So kind of looking at all of these empires, right? Babylonian Empire is gone. Medo-Persian Empire is gone. Grecian Empire is finished, right? Even the 4 divisions of these empires and those that ruled over them is finished, right? The kings that arose in their kingdoms in the latter days, their kingdom is finished. The little horn's kingdom is finished, and arises in its place is the eternal kingdom. And I find it to be interesting. The reason, again, why I put it here is because in the days of those kings. So God, it seems, destroys this entire kingdom, this divided kingdom, this kingdom of the little horn. Now, I have provided for you a chart, which is here. I put this all together. So what you see on the screen is what we just looked at, what we just went through. Okay. The reason why this is so involved is because all of these references here from Daniel chapter 2 to 7 concerning Gentile history, the focus is Babylon. It is always Babylon. The reason why is because Daniel is in captivity in Babylon. He's under a Babylonian king, right? Babylon is the focus of the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Grecian Empire. Remember, I told you that Alexander the Great was buried in Babylon. He wanted to make that his capital. He never got a chance to do that. Okay? From the 4 kingdoms that are divided amongst Alexander the Great's rule, Seleucus rules over Babylon, which is still in focus. Okay? Out of Seleucid, or the Seleucid Empire, arises Parthia, which obtains Babylon. Okay, so Daniel chapter 2 and 7, really somewhat of the focus is Babylon. That's what we need to keep in mind. Okay, the transgressors of the kingdom, I believe, have to do with these particular kingdoms, but more specifically Ptolemy and Antigonus. Again, I will make that case when we get there. This side of the board, or this side of the paper, has to do with the future. Things that have not yet taken place. Okay? Chapter 8 is the focus of Israel. Israel's history in parallel to Gentile history. Okay? This is why this is all confusing, because we focus on one, but we neglect the other. Okay? Remember, God, when he has a perspective, it's multifaceted. It's, he's showing you different angles. You know what I'm saying? But we can't neglect one angle for another. The focus in chapter 8 is Gentile history, Israelite history in conjunction with this. Okay? That's why the transgressors of the kingdom, I believe, the focus is Gentile history in relation to Israel's history. Okay? And again, we'll talk about that when we get there. The 4 kings and their kingdoms have yet to take place. Okay? Now, this is future from the perspective of Daniel. Daniel's not going to see any of this. He's going to be dead. He's going to be gone. Okay? He's not going to see any of this. Okay? As a matter of fact, I think he just gets close to here and then he's dead. He doesn't see the Grecian Empire. He doesn't see Ptolemy, Antigonus, and all that. He doesn't see the Parthian Empire. He doesn't see how it impacts Israel, the transgressors. He doesn't see any of this. He's not alive to see this. Okay? So this is all future from the perspective of Daniel. The future, the focus here, actually it's changed a little bit from the chart that I have now. Actually, it's more up here. But the focus here is Babylon and Israel. So the 4 kings, the divided kingdom, the transgressor and his rulers, and the eternal kingdom. This is all the focus here, Babylon and Israel, that God will obtain both. And he will rule over Israel and destroy this, Babylon, essentially. Okay? There's a lot there. So if you have any questions about this, please come and let me know. For those who are online, I will send this to you as well, so that you can have it and mark it up and make your own notations if you like. Very quickly, at the end of chapter 8, what is the vision of the ram and the goat? Well, the vision of the ram and the goat concerning Israelite history corresponds or parallels Gentile history pertaining to the end. We cannot overlook this. Okay, we are looking at multiple timelines concerning Gentile history and Israelite history, and how at the end they are going to coalesce together. Okay, concerning the little horn, and how God is going to destroy this kingdom that is coming, this divided kingdom that seeks to destroy Gentiles and Israel. Again, what is the little horn? Well, the little horn is a description of the one who will come to display deception, cunning, and destruction unlike anything the world has ever seen. And I believe that is articulated at the end of Daniel 11 and 12. Okay. Lastly, why are these things important for Daniel to know? Again, Daniel's not going to see any of this. He's being told a lot of details, a lot of intricate details, and he's not going to see any of this. Again, this information, which is written in Hebrew, is important for Daniel to know specifically concerning the Hebrew people and their history, their future history, and for them to understand the kingdoms that are to come, that they will be under, and recognize the one who is coming, that ultimately they will see and observe as a nation, and the ultimate victory of the high king of the rulers, which is essentially their Messiah, and the world's Savior, essentially delivering them from this treacherous, terrible, awful, destructive kingdom, and of course establishing his kingdom, which will endure forever. That's it for me. I'm sure it's as clear as mud. Prophecy, again, is multifaceted. It is multilinear. Okay, there's lots of things going on, and my attempt was to try to articulate what we have seen so far, okay, from chapters 2 to 7. It's going to get a little bit more complex, because at the end of this, I'm going to take all the information from Daniel 9, Daniel 10, Daniel 11, Daniel 12, and add it to this. So by the time we're done, you should have a chart that looks almost like a madman did it. Okay, we're going to try to do that, but we'll talk about that when we get further into the book itself. Okay, let's pray, and we will close out this lecture. Lord, it just goes to show you that you are a God who is who can understand your ways. It's just amazing to me how you're able to reveal this to Daniel, and Daniel is able to write this down with attention, with detail, that we can go back and forth and try to piece together the things to come. And that's an amazing thing. I thank you so much, Lord, that no man can concoct this. It's just that it is amazing, the detail that we see displayed here. May we continue to ponder the things to come, not out of fear, but out of awe, the fact that you have given us this information, these details, so that we may know and be confident that the destructive kingdom that is to come cannot avail you. What a cool thing. For it's in your Son's name. Amen.